He's most certainly a misogynist. He has views about owning women.
I think if you're in a relationship, you stay in that relationship with that one person.
Okay, so physically speaking, I do believe men created and built society as to what it is.
I think this is just another example. It comes down to context.
I do agree that the majority of women are smarter than guys, but if it's coming to like a fist fight or whatever, like best believe like I'd kick a woman's ass like any day.
Andrew Tate is a misogynist. 3, 2, 1.
Like, I do understand like why people say he is, because like his point of views and stuff like that, but at the same time I do also think that like he's just giving the same energy to everyone. Like, obviously, in my opinion, like some people act useless and some people don't, and it's like both women and men, and he's like more of like a traditional values type of guy, if that kind of makes sense. So yeah.
He's most certainly a misogynist. He has views about owning women and that he has authority over a woman just because he's married. I mean, just because a woman is married to a guy. He thinks that like walking your daughter down the aisle is the father giving away women like it's a property. That's, to me, is misogynist, pure misogynistic.
Yes, I agree slightly that he's a misogynist because I grew up in a very traditional household back in Sri Lanka, and I would probably use my mom as an example because my dad, it's probably really personal, but I'll say it anyways. My dad treated her the same way that he did, and I think she would have done a lot more in a job, and she would have really rose up in her career if she wasn't just limited to being in the kitchen. So definitely have points that I agree with Andrew Tate on, but I saw it firsthand and the effect it had on my mom. So yeah.
Andrew Tate said, "A lot of the world's problems could be fixed if women walked around with their body counts on their foreheads. If women can't be sleeping with anybody and everybody because they will be known for it and shamed for it, they're going to be very, very selective with who they sleep with." 3, 2, 1.
I think people forget that it takes two to tango. So if we're going to put the body count of women up for everyone to see, I'm going to see your body count as a man as well. And like, it's probably going to be the same more or less. So does that mean that you should be shamed as well for your body count? Like, it just doesn't make sense that I, as a woman who enjoys having sex or has consensual good sex, should be like, feel guilty about that. Like, why?
Yeah, I kind of do agree with what she's saying. It does take two to tango. Obviously, the majority of guys do use women, so like for us to lower women's value and say like all that shit about their body count, it's not really on, but I'm in the middle because I do think it'd be kind of funny if we'd all have like our body count numbers on our foreheads. So, yeah.
I think this is just another example. It comes down to context. I think you can't really take some of his one-liners, out of context. It's a common theme. Like, usually if you watch a full video of what he's been saying, it's a completely different story. With this, I believe what he was saying is it comes down to, it's not just one-sided. He did just say women in there, but I agree that we should have, men's body counts on their forehead or whatever, because it is something that everyone deems as, a big thing, and it sort of avoids everyone lying. I feel like this world would be a lot better if people just, didn't have any secrets. Everyone was just open with, everything. There's nothing to be ashamed of.
I do agree that we definitely need context when we're thinking about these things, but Tate was definitely just referring to it as women. Like, he specifically said that it is bad for if a woman sleeps around with men, whereas it's not if a man does the same. So for him, he was specifically only meaning for with women.
I just wanted to add that with showing the body count, you don't actually know why somebody has a certain body count. So that's just assuming that every person that somebody sleeps with is consensual and that they chose that for that to happen. And as well, you don't know if it is heterosexual sex as well. So I could have a high body count, but I'm sleeping with women. So what does that mean? Because he's obviously referring to men sleeping with women.
Depression does not exist. 3, 2, 1.
So I think depression is definitely a real thing. I mean, I've gone through it before. It's not something that you can just, one day be like depressed and the next day be like, I'm good, let's get back to it. It's a process. And I feel like, I guess everyone else who's here has felt some form of depression, whether it be, or some kind of sadness. And yeah, I think anyone who does say that it doesn't exist probably isn't aware that they've had it before, or isn't aware of anyone else who isn't really aware of anyone else around them who has had it. So, or maybe they're just like denying it.
Okay, so I do believe that depression does exist, but to a degree. I do believe in clinical depression, but not just anyone stamping that just because they're upset for a long period of time that they're depressed. Lots of people just have no ambition in life most of the time, and because they can't do anything about it, then they say, I'm sad, I'm depressed, and then, make a sook out of it. So I do believe there is such thing as depression, but not every case of depression is depression, in my opinion.
All right. Following on that, I agree. Depression 100% does exist. It's an emotion. It's normal. It's people. You can get sad. You can get really sad. You can get depressed. There's levels to it, right? I feel like now in society, depression has become like a trend, and now it's popular to be depressed, and I feel like that's really upsetting for the people who are genuinely depressed, because, as you said, it kind of takes away the sort of social credibility for people who are actually sad, and then that limits people's, ability to help. So I 100% agree depression does exist, but I think whatever you give energy to is sort of what you start believing. If I always tell myself, I'm depressed, I'm going to keep getting more and more depressed. Whereas if I tell myself, I'm more happy, I'm going to start feeling a lot better about myself. Yeah, I may not cure it 100%, but I'll feel a little bit better.
I think it's important to remember that with depression comes lack of motivation. So it's important to remember that just because someone's not doing something, it's not because they're lazy, it is because it is one of the effects of depression. And I mean, like, physically sitting on the sofa, not able to get up. So yeah, and obviously there are different levels, but it needs to be looked at in a holistic way where you've got, doctors and psychiatrists and lifestyle changes. And yeah, it's just really important to know that it is definitely a thing, and often the people in it cannot get themselves out of it. They do need help, and I mean, people don't suicide for no reason. So yeah, it's definitely a thing.
Highly successful men do not have to be sexually exclusive in relationships. 3, 2, 1.
I'm standing neutral because men, I don't have a say in what they can and can't do, and neither can they with mine. So if they don't want to be exclusive to a woman, or if they don't, that's not my opinion to share. I mean, that's not my opinion to have.
I'm staying neutral because, well, firstly, I believe if you're committed to someone and that's what you agree on, being exclusive, and that's great. But I'm also a person that believes in polyamory and openness. So if we discuss being open and you being with other people, then that's fine. I don't necessarily agree with the statement that just because you have a certain amount of success, you deserve to choose whether you're not open or not, just like purely based on you having success, if that makes sense. Like, it should be an agreement that you and your partner come to.
So I was going to say, sexually exclusive, I think, would mean like you're exclusively attached to the one partner in the relationship. And obviously a relationship can be a very intimate thing. And if you were to, have multiple partners, that may affect either one or both people mentally or physically in the long run. And jealousy obviously can come into it. And, I'm in a relationship, I'm married. So, and if I was to go off and, join with someone else, then the other partner might not know about it, and they might, become very depressed because one person might have more feelings for one person relationship than the other. And then if one felt differently about the other, then they might have been like, that they love you more, but the other person obviously doesn't have the same feelings. So I think regardless of your success, your value, I think if you're in a relationship, you stay in that relationship with that one person.
I definitely agree with the guys standing in the neutral line. Each their own, like if you want to be in a monogamous relationship, so be it. If you want to be polygamous, that's cool too, as long as everyone is, like on board with everything and they're not hurting anyone's feelings. But when it comes to, if a man's success or like, I think status has nothing to do with it, period. Money doesn't really have anything to do with love.
I understand where she's coming from with the whole like status thing, but I do agree that once you do have a certain amount of status, you kind of do have more options to kind of just fling around, I guess. So that's kind of why I'm in the middle. Yeah.
I agree with what was said before with when you have higher status, you do have more options, but that's not necessarily a healthy or good thing. I do think that it is important that both parties agree, and if they choose not to be monogamous, then that's up to them. But what status brings is that the girls either don't have good self-esteem, so they just go for anyone, even if it's, for status, or they're doing it for the money. So you're not going to get a healthy relationship in that way.
Andrew Tate said, "Modern society we live in has been built by men. Let's cut the crap. All the roads you see, all the buildings you see, everything around you, men built." 3, 2, 1.
I'm in the middle because physically, men built technically everything if you go back in history, but I feel like women built families, and so that's I feel like everyone has their own distinct role. It comes down to like yin and yang. We always look at things that are sort of directly in front of us, and that's what people always see. Who built the Colosseum? Who built this building? Who built whatever? But there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that makes up the whole picture.
I was going to say a similar point to that as well. Men physically build everything, but also there's a lot of things that men won't let women partake in, like including work, like the workforce, sports, things like that. just because men physically did that doesn't mean that women women don't want to do those kind of things. Like, you know, I remember being younger wanting to play football and boys would be like, you can't fucking play football, you're a girl. Like shit like that. It's not that we didn't want to be part of it, it's that a lot of the time we actually couldn't be. And that you can see that if you look through history in every type of culture. And yeah, exactly, like men might have gone to war, did all that, but we also, built families. We also put food on the table for when they came home. Like it took two to tango again, because like, you know, there's men and women and others, and we all work together to create the society that we live in.
If you want to define build like physically what you said, then yeah, okay. Most men have built buildings, whatnot. But if you want to go into details about how women have built certain societies and being able to accept things like shed light on things like depression and all those things, women have done a lot more in that respect. Again, the whole feminine and masculine energy coming together.
Yeah, I wanted to add on that as well. Like, yes, today we've got, you know, modern society, but how much, and, you know, let's say if you said that, you know, men built modern society as we see it today, how much better would it have been now if women were able to participate way back then? Because as you said, like, you know, we weren't really able to do much, you know, back in the day as we were now, just because we're more socially aware. So yeah, you know, today's cool, we've got luxuries and whatnot, but like imagine how much more we would have had now if women were able to participate back then.
To say that there's only a physical working aspect and then the at-home aspect, I feel, is very narrow-minded, because if you look at big buildings, it's not just the physical work, it's the design, it's the organising people. Women can do that. Just because they are physiologically not as strong as men doesn't mean that they can't do other things, and they shouldn't just be relegated to the household.
Okay, so physically speaking, I do believe men created and built society as to what it is. But in saying in most of the answers here that women build the home, I do agree to an extent, but it takes both men and women to build a home and a family. That's pretty much all I have to say right now about that.
Men and women are not equal. 3, 2, 1.
All right, yeah, I agree that men and women aren't equal, but that's on a spectrum of things. Like, for me, I'm academically not smart. I do agree that the majority of women are smarter than guys, but if it's coming to like a, you know, like a fist fight or whatever, like, best believe, like, I'd kick mom's ass, like, any day. So yeah, that's kind of what I got. I'm a meathead.
So men and women, they're obviously different genders, different physiological aspects and everything. But as humans, we're all equal, we're all humans, right? Some people can say a woman's not capable of doing some things a man can. Well, they could if they trained and tried for it. A man not capable of doing some things a woman could. They could, maybe. Yeah, but like, just overall, I think we're all humans, we're all equal. We all have the same, you know, makeup of body. We all think, we all feel. I think we're all equal in that way.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to generalize quite a bit, but from a physical aspect, I think men in majority are stronger than women, purely from a physical aspect. I work at a couple of clubs, and you'd see, you know, girls talking about equality and this, that, and then they get into a fist fight, and now the guy can't, well, the girl could hit the guy, but the guy can't hit back because, you know, you can't hit a girl. But then where's the equality in that? Because they know that they'll probably get attacked pretty hard. From like a mental standpoint, honestly, other than a physical standpoint, I don't see any other difference. I think there's equally enough smart women and equally enough smart men. And, a man could do a woman's role and a woman could do a man's role. So there is no real men, like a man's role or a female's role anymore. But it's purely just from a physical standpoint, we're not equal. Again, I'm just generalizing, so that's a caveat to that. There's obviously a couple of women that'll probably beat me up to a pulp, but not as many. So, yeah, just saying.
We are equal, but we are different. So physiologically speaking, yes, men are stronger. Women not generally aren't. However, people who would say that, men are smarter or that there's mental differences, I would be questioning whether that is part of our society or whether that is an actual difference. Is it that people have been trained to think that men are this way, women are this way, or are they actually physiologically that way?
Just because two people are different physically does not mean that they're not equal, because someone being equal is you having the same respect for them as you have for yourself. And I think right now, although women can do a lot of things and are accepted in a lot of spaces, we still aren't equal to men, in the sense that abortion in America just got criminalized. So you now have control over our bodies. The shit that's happening in Iran, just so much shit that is happening in the world just proves over and over that we're not equally respected by everyone, whether it is a man, a woman, or anyone. Just look at, court cases of women not being believed and just things like that. Like, yes, everyone's like, physically we're not the same, but I think in this kind of statement, it's asking whether women and men and others are respected equally, and we're not. Like, I just think, period, we're not there yet. We can say we're getting there, but we're not there.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it comes back down to yin and yang, as I was saying before. We're completely different, but we're completely equal at the same time. But in the yin and yang, there's a bit of black in the white and there's a bit of white in the black, which means that represents masculine and feminine energy. So I feel like it's really important that, we embrace, the masculine role and the feminine role and everything. So that's equal, we're perfectly balanced. But I feel like a lot of the problems in today's society is that femininity is overpowering the masculinity and masculinity is overpowering the femininity. Basically, so like dudes are starting to act like chicks and chicks are starting to act like dudes. And I feel like because of that whole situation, because of, people trying to embrace more masculinity if they're feminine as opposed to the other way around. And that's why a lot of our problems have started, I believe. There's nothing wrong with it. I get it, everyone be themselves and everything like that, but there's just sort of biologically how we're made up is, we're made of different things. We have different strengths and weaknesses. And I feel like it's no use me trying to play to one of my weaknesses when, my partner might be 10 times better than me at that. So
I'm standing here because I believe men and women should be equal, respectfully equal in their rights. It doesn't matter about physicality and all of those things. Men and women should be equal. And if you're talking about masculinity and femininity and all of those aspects, that, I guess, it is formed at home. Women these days are becoming more masculine because, again, there is imbalance at home in the way they grow up and whatnot. So respectfully, yes, men and women should be equal.
I agree that men and women aren't equal. Like physically, yes. We're sort of, for example, Ashwin and I, like he's huge and I'm so small. So, I'm going to get beat up if anything. But mentally, when we're in the household together, we're equal in a sense that, if I can think of something creatively, to contribute to our household, and then what you said with yin and yang, we're complementary, and I think that's what makes it work. And then if Ashwin is more, he's more of logical, accounts, so, he can definitely help us in the household with that sort of, aspect. And,
Okay, let's hug it out. Everyone's opinions are amazing, but let's hug it out. No beef. Come on. Yay! A group hug!
Aren't you going to